Hello and welcome. My name is Brian McAvoy.
And I'm Tim Shank. This is Two Cyborgs and a Microphone, and we're cyborgs.
And we have a microphone. It's pretty cut and dry.
Today we have a really cool subject.
Audible groan.
Cryonics.
Okay, so cryonics are a subset of cryogenics. Because if you listen to sci-fi movies or read sci-fi books that don't know the difference, you'll be like, oh, this guy is cryogenically frozen. I guess that's technically true. Well, not really, because frozen is something different.
What is the difference between cryonics and cryogenics?
I'm glad you asked. Cryogenics is basically the study of things that are really cold, and Wikipedia probably words it a little more technically than that. Cryonics, what we're interested in, is about freezing bodies that have just passed. And why would we want to talk about that?
Well, we're not talking about the album Cryonics by Hot Cross?
We aren't. That's a different podcast.
Oh, well.
Sorry. Oh, maybe in the after show. We're interested in cryonics because somebody could pass, have their body vitrified, and we'll get into the definition of vitrified. Sometime in the nebulous future, they could be revived, their problems could be solved, and they would live well beyond their lifespan, which you and I would expect right now.
In some senses, cryonics is death. The heart stops, the brain stops, everything stops. So, we're talking about it in the context of extending life because we don't really know where that point of death is. It used to be when you stop breathing. Well, now we can stop breathing for a long time. They can stop, they can stop the breath as long as there's brain activity and a little bit of oxygen in the body, then you can still live. And then they said, well, it's when the heart stops beating. Well, now we can stop the heart for an extended period of time and the blood's not flowing, but people can still live. So this threshold of death, as medical science develops and as medical science progresses, the threshold that we're calling death, it just keeps moving up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think maybe it's Indian cultures. They have 7 stages of death, and like when you actually start decomposing is just one of their stages. It's not the final stage of death, but that's not important right now. What's important is that cryonics, when this takes place, as you were talking about the stages of death, it's after the heart stops, because you can't legally cryogenically preserve somebody. That's still considered murder. It's when the heart stops, so they're legally dead. So if you have like a do not resuscitate order, that is the point where they're like, okay, we're calling it. But cryonics happens right before your brain ceases activity.
And do you happen to know how long the brain is active after the blood stops flowing on average?
I don't. And here's maybe where we mention that cryonics is a total crapshoot.
Yeah.
There is no guarantee that 20 years down the line, we're even going to know how to revive a person. There's no guarantee that 100 years from now, they'll have a cure for whatever killed you.
Yeah, well, you'll remember we talked to the director of the Cryonics Institute in Michigan.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
Yeah, he was cool. But there's three, he said on average 3 fracturing events when somebody is cryonically preserved. So we'll go into the process. We'll talk about how they do this. Mm-hmm. But in the process of getting people to that deep freeze state, the change in temperature, as the matter changes phases, it actually cracks. So organs will have fractures in them. They call them fracture events. Mm-hmm. So when somebody's cryonically preserved, it actually puts cracks in sometimes vital organs. And we don't know that we can fix that later.
Right.
The whole concept of cryonics is assuming that medical technology will advance far enough to reverse the damage that you do in the process of freezing somebody.
Total crapshoot. And, some people think, hey, it's better than nothing, and that's up to the listeners to decide.
The chances of recovering a decomposed body is much less than this.
Much less.
Right. Let me see. I have an article here. I know how it works, kind of. So what happens is when you die, whatever physician is is trying to keep you alive at that moment. It says time of death. And at that point, a team of people sometimes rushes in and they replace your blood with essentially an antifreeze and supply your brain with enough oxygen and blood to preserve minimal function until you can be transported to the suspension facility, packed in ice, and injected with heparin, which is an anticoagulant to prevent your blood from clotting during the trip. So what happens once you get to the cryonics facility?
You arrive there and they start the vitrification process. Now, vitrification is different than freezing because freezing would cause all the water in your cells to burst. Because as we know, water expands when it freezes, and your cells are a particular size. If the stuff inside those cells tries to get bigger than the container, they pop.
And ice crystals are sharp, too.
Oh, yeah, they're just bad news all around if you want to keep something safe. I mean, look at freezer-burned food. It's in really bad shape. If that happened to your brain, you're probably not going to recover from that. So anyway, what they do is they replace the water in your body with a cryoprotectant, kind of like a human antifreeze.
What's that made out of?
It's a glycerol-based chemical.
Well, glycerol is a common antifreeze in things like HVAC systems and stuff like that.
Okay, well, I don't know if it's good enough for machines. We're basically meat machines, so cool. This is where you get into the vitrification, because now you're not freezing in the way an ice cube freezes. You're being vitrified, which is getting to those really, really cold cryogenic temperatures without forming ice crystals, which is important because when you get to the future, you don't want to be freezer burned. When the president of the Michigan Institute was talking to us,
let's put his name on him because he was nice and everything. So let's call him Dennis Kowalski from the Cryogenic Institute.
He said something that really stuck with me, and I don't know why this is what stuck with me. When you're frozen, you're not just in your own vat of cool sci-fi glowing lights and bubbles bubbling up every few seconds. You are stuck into a big vat of liquid nitrogen, head down. And the reason they do this head down is because if there's a problem with the freezing, like let's say they lose power for many hours, the first thing to thaw is your feet. Well, if you get to the future, hopefully we have really good cybernetic feet and you can replace those. But if your brain reaches an unsafe temperature, it's going to be a lot worse for you. So anyway, yeah, that was what I remember from the guy.
And it's liquid nitrogen that they submerge you in once that piece is done to do the vitrification.
Yeah, your final preservation, entombment, well, hopefully it's not final, is that they put you in this big vat of liquid nitrogen. They put you head down, naked, with a bunch of other people.
And you say head down, but what a lot of people do is they only preserve their head.
It's a quarter of the price.
Yeah. So to save cost, there's you can do it with your whole body, or you can just preserve your head for a much reduced fee. And the thought there is that the body is going to be outmoded. You can replace the body later as long as you somehow preserve your intelligence and personality. And you can have that transplanted into, say, a robot.
Two things about that. Walt Disney never got his head frozen or put in space. I know those are fun little myths that don't actually exist. Second thing, without a body, you're probably not going to get reanimated as soon as the folks who froze their whole body. But those are minor.
The reason I brought this topic up to you, Brian, is because there's a new, is it a process?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think I heard about that with it's like a magic microwave version.
Okay, so this is only available in small samples, so they're not yet doing this with whole bodies. Maybe it's viable for heads, but there's a new way to cool the organs to very low temperatures. Thawing them out's much more difficult, but this is all for organ transplants and stuff like this. But it gives us a new option for it makes cryopreservation more viable for organs. And maybe will bleed over into cryonics, where we'll have less fracturing event.
Yeah, I read something, and I thought it was more about reversing the cryonics process, the way of heating it up, which was cool because we can freeze things just fine. We have no problem making things cold. Getting them back into a usable form, reanimation of organs has been scant, if even. And this new process, from what I understand, is able to heat up the organs uniformly, and that's what allows it to be done quickly. And by doing it quickly, you have less damage to them. And as you were mentioning, this is for organ transplants. So half of donated organs are just thrown away because they're not brought to the patient in time. And if you could freeze them, well, you could wait a week and then thaw them out when necessary.
Possibly a year.
Yeah.
I mean, when we're talking cryonics, we're looking at freezing for 50 to 100 years.
I think I read that if we could reliably preserve donated organs, that the organ shortage would be gone in about 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is a big step. This is a big step in really a groundbreaking event to be able to do this.
Well, it's great for cryonics.
The
it's
medical
great for
science.
People who need organs.
I don't know if this is. It uses nanoparticles to heat the tissues. So this is kind of where we're going with. The more we develop technology, the more capability we're going to have. Because now we're using. When I read this initially, I read a synopsis and it talked about what kind of nanoparticles they use, and they weren't uncommon. Silica.
Right.
Silica-coated iron oxide nanoparticles. So they're common particle. And what they use is a magnetic field to heat those up. That makes the reanimation of that tissue much easier, much more successful.
Like I said, Magic Microwave, it heats it uniformly instead of just zapping it at one point or like on a skillet where you just heat it from the bottom.
So, Brian, would you get cryopreserved?
Man, that's a tough question. Like, I've been thinking about this for over a year. And I am not decided on it yet. Part of me is like, okay, when I go, if we get into next time, we're gonna do human uploading, immortalization through putting your brain into a computer. I would probably do that very early on. But the cryonics, I don't know. I'm not as sold on it. So I'm undecided. What would you do?
Well, I don't know either. And see, it kind of boils down to the choice of certain death or not certain death at this point for us.
Yeah.
So if you put it in those simple terms, you're either certainly going to be dead or you might not be dead. I think it's a pretty simple choice, and it's just a matter of the cost at that point.
Well, there's the neat thing about the cost is you don't pay it because your life insurance policy pays it. So
right.
I think the last time I checked, it was about $200,000 to be frozen. Well, I don't have $200,000 sitting around, but getting a $200,000 life insurance policy is, for somebody my age who's never smoked, that's easy.
Yeah, and for anybody really, if you just put it on the insurance policy. Now, my wife would probably have a problem with that as she goes broke because I put all my money into saving me for later, and she loses her house. And
I think
that might be an issue.
My SO might have a problem because McAvoys are notoriously short-lived. I do not plan to outlive my partner.
I don't believe that, Brian. I don't believe that McAvoys are notoriously short-lived.
Oh heavens. Except for my grandmother, she outlived everyone. She outlived her husband. She outlived all 3 kids. Man, that was a tough lady.
So you're saying that you don't know if you would get cryopreservation. You haven't come to a decision or don't even have an opinion really one way or the other.
I haven't been sold, no. If I had to write out my will today and determine where my insurance money was going, I don't know if I would do cryonics.
And I'm with you too. I don't know if I would. But that's the nature of it, I guess.
It's kind of one of those like, oh yeah, I think it's cool, but I don't know if that's for me. Hang gliding, that seems cool. I don't know if that's for me. Swimming with sharks, that seems cool. I don't know if that's for me. I'm excited for our next show because talking about brain uploading, That is exciting to me. That seems so dang cool, and I am excited to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. I don't know if I'll have an unusual take on it, Brian, because I'm pretty convinced we're in a simulation already. So
yeah.
Uploading your mind in a simulation where you're already... we'll have to see where that goes. So make sure you come back and listen to our next episode. We'd like to invite any of our listeners to email us at cyborgs@twocyborgs.com, and you can email either of us individually by using our names. So it's tim@twocyborgs.com or brian@twocyborgs.com. Also, check out our new website. It's twocyborgs.com. There you can find a link to patrons. So if you want to support us, and we do appreciate the support, we both drastically need upgrades, but it also helps offset the cost for publishing and web hosting and all of that stuff. So you can find that on our website. There's a link in the menu, or you can just go to twocyborgs.com/patron.
Help us buy new mics. We use those. And check out our store. You can get a swanky hooded sweatshirt with the Two Cyborgs logo on the front, so you can support our podcast and you can stay warm. This is Ryan McAvoy, and I'm wearing one of the hoodies right now.
And this is Tim Shank. You've been listening to Two Cyborgs and a Microphone, brought to you by two cyborgs who definitely have a microphone.
Like, follow, share, +1, and don't forget to subscribe on any of our popular podcast services, including Google Play Music, iTunes, and Stitcher. Help us move up that podcast ladder by subscribing and commenting on iTunes.
And Twitter, @2cyborgs.
Yep.
Hit us up, retweet, all of that stuff. And then the second paragraph.
I don't know the answer.
Shut up. You don't know the answer to anything.
Listen, you smarmy bitch.
Yeah, she pisses me off. Echo, play Two Cyborgs in a Microphone podcast.
Yeah, I've tried it too.
Getting the latest episode of Two Cyborgs and a Microphone. Here it is from TuneIn.
What?
Look at that! She got it!
Hello and welcome.
Ah!
That's cool. Oh, we got to mention that at the end.
I don't know if this will
Yeah.
come through on there, and I can't bring my microphone over there, but we should get a recording of that. Echo, stop. Echo, stop. That is beautiful. Oh, that's great. Okay, anyway, we're totally off the wagon here. We're totally off the track.
Oh,
Yeah, we're totally off track.
never
So.
happens.